it's me again. So far on this channel, I've done an illustration, I've done studies, and as my cover banner suggests, it's time to get into designs. And to be honest, I figured in the beginning that in the interest of time, I should do a single standalone design that, doesn't need to be perfect or take too much effort. Something low pressure, be done in a week. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen. My perfectionism just really kicked in strong, and before I knew it, I was doing designing, keyframes, action sheets, sketches, stuff like that. Just too much, but at least past tense me thought it wouldn't be too much work. But yeah, I'm working on it, and making videos is actually really helping to curb most of the perfectionism that I get. Obviously, not this time, but for the most part, it's very helpful. When I was starting out, everything I thought about sounded like a cool idea, which is a good thing, right? Well, for me, it just meant that I had a problem because I wanted to do all of these cool ideas justice, and in my perfectionist brain, that just means taking as much time as I think that I need to make them all perfect. So I kind of needed a kick in the butt to commit to an idea, commit to starting a design, so I brought in some help. Meet Jason. He proposed that I design a nightmare he once had during an episode of sleep paralysis. In case you didn't already know, sleep paralysis is basically when a person is between waking up and falling asleep, so they're conscious enough, but not fully out of their dream state, and usually unable to move or speak. During sleep paralysis, a person may experience hallucinations, which are usually very short but feel very real. It's a pretty normal thing to happen, but it can still freak you out. Anyway, Jason saw a monster during an episode of sleep paralysis, so I was able to get a description from him and turn it into a design brief. What do you say about it? Let me grab my notes real quick. Okay, so firstly, he said he saw a black figure that went into his parents' room, then his sister's room before entering his. He also said it was tall, taller than the door frame, in fact. It was around 7 feet tall, and it had to bend down with one hand on the door frame to get inside his room. And even before it did that, he said it kind of just stood there and stared at him, like some sort of peeping Tom. Anyway, moving on. He also said it was humanoid looking, but with jagged edges which were blurry with noise, which is kind of hard to describe, but the only other way I would describe it is it looked like what static would look like, which brings me to the next point, which is it sounded like static as well. It had, as Jason said, an aura of noise that got exponentially louder as it approached. He also didn't see any facial features on it. It didn't seem especially evil to him, but don't get me wrong, he said it was still terrifying. And then, of course, he couldn't scream or move, which is, as I said earlier, pretty common. Now let's talk about my goal for this design. I don't just want to illustrate a picture of what it looked like to Jason, but I actually wanted to design it, like behind the scenes, what does it look like and what does it act like? Maybe, say it's a monster in a TV show, right? To do that, we have to start by asking questions to tell a story. Story is paramount. Once you have a little bit of story, it'll inform your designs and do the heavy lifting of decision making for you. But don't get me wrong, it's still hard work just coming up with good ideas to choose from. The first question might be, how come this thing approached Jason like it was gonna suck his blood or do something equally creepy, Like, at least touch him somehow. Wait, now that I think about it, I'm glad it was just a hallucination, or I'd have to fight the hoe. Anyway, moving on, back to the question. I was thinking, since it takes form as a mostly intangible spirit, maybe it can feed off of intangible things. You are what you eat, right? Let me explain. Have you ever walked into a room and then immediately forgotten why you went there or what you wanted to get? Most people might just go, I'm so absent-minded and quirky, I forgot what I was doing. But I would like to propose the idea that if you lived in this alternate world where this monster exists, the fact that you forgot might have actually been the monster's doing. I don't want to make it sound like it was just hiding in a corner going, boo! But say you walked into this room and actually saw it, right? What would you do? Well, the most common side effect of sleep paralysis is that people can't move or speak, which sounds a lot like going into shock from seeing something terrifying, so maybe that's just this monster's effect on humans. If you are what you eat after all, the juiciest, most delicious memories to its taste must also be the scariest, most traumatizing memories a person has. But not the ones that have shaped the person, or the monster would definitely be leaving a trace of its presence, right? Because people don't usually forget, horrible things they saw as a child, right? That'd be weird. So instead, this monster would probably mainly target nightmares. Remember that Jason said it didn't feel necessarily evil? This nightmare eating idea makes a lot of sense to me because it makes me think that they're neither inherently malevolent nor benevolent, since the reason they'd scare us is only to create a deliciously traumatic memory in us for them to devour. In this way, they would probably feed off of sleeping people by consuming their nightmares, right? Make sense? Still with me? Good. This idea is actually very important. It's not just central to the design, but in this world that I'm not fleshing out because this was supposed to be a standalone one-week design, I could see some primitive civilizations praising it as a benevolent nightmare eater and trying to summon it to cure insomnia or fever-induced hallucinations, things like that, right? So hey, next time you think you forget something, watch out. Alright, let's talk about shape language. Now, this isn't a lesson. I am by no means a teacher, but I am aware that some people watching this aren't artists. And so I still want to make my videos understandable for really anyone, no matter your skill level. So I'm just going to take a quick second to explain kind of like the primitive meanings behind shapes that are used in design and animation. Circles usually mean something soft, friendly, like playful, like a bouncy ball, for example. It doesn't just mean that, but these are very general words that I'm using to describe it, right? Squares are usually used to denote something solid, reliable, loyal, immovable. So, someone who doesn't change very much. And on the flip side, triangles are used for something dynamic. If you think about it, it's just a square that's been cut in half, right? Or a rectangle that's been cut in half sometimes. That third side is oblique. It's on a slant. And that kind of tells us humans that this is an unpredictable type of shape. It's not a square. Oh, it did something different, And it might sound like I'm reading a lot into this, but yeah, trust me, it's an actual thing. It's crazy. It's amazing. But triangles also have jagged edges, right? They're very sharp, and so they can also be dangerous. Now, for this design, I actually wanted to stay away from triangles because even though this design is supposed to be scary, it's not evil, remember? And anyway, triangles are used so much anyway, and a ton of really cool looking designs, but in horror themes and things that are supposed to scare you, they always have jagged teeth, It's very overused, so I wanted to stay away from mainly using triangles. So I turned to static for inspiration. Remember, Jason said this thing is basically static personified? So I actually looked at screenshots of static when it's, on a TV monitor. And sometimes they look kind of jagged, but remember, we're trying to stay away from really harsh edges. Other times, they were kind of wiggly. I really liked the wiggly boys because they were curvy and, whoa. Am I talking about a static or a person here? No, but, oh no. Cut that out, Melanie. Anyway, I really liked the images that had more wiggly shapes because to me, static usually inherently means chaos. It means madness. It's very disorienting. It's unnatural because static only occurs around electronics. You never get static from a tree, right? It doesn't come from organic life. It's also very startling, agitating. If you listen to it for a long time, you're probably gonna get angry at it, right? Or get frustrated. Now, my point here is that we could use those types of curves that appear and are very unique to certain static patterns in this design. Now, let me give you an example. I said just a second ago that a keyword for static in my mind is indistinct, because sometimes if you're listening to radio static, you can hear a song and very far away, and it's very indistinct and indistinguishable. In the same way, I wanted to use that idea for the face. Okay, so remember, according to the brief that I got from Jason, this monster has no facial features. I could have done something like this, which really still pushes the creepy vibe in my opinion. But I also feel like I've done something similar to it in the past, so I wanted to go for a new approach. This is going to be kind of a very specific memory, but if you have siblings, maybe you'll know what I mean. Have you ever seen what a face looks like when you have a blanket over it? When my brothers and I were little, we used to play several different types of games, and for some of them, we'd put blankets over our heads, right? Sometimes we'd crawl around the house with blankets on our heads. Sometimes we'd wrestle while having blankets over our faces. Don't ask. I don't know why we did that. We thought it was fun. So going back to the idea of flowing static, in the same way, maybe the skin on this monster's face has the same effect that a covering on a person's face might have. When, if you pull it around their face, you can still see the nose, you know, you can still kind of see where things are, but you still can't like actually make those features out. So maybe it doesn't need to be doing anything. But just like how different folds appear when you're moving a blanket over your face, even if you're not saying anything, different types of depressions and marks will appear as if there's a face underneath all that smoke and static, but you can't really make it out. Moving on. He's also a hallucination, so I wanted to play with illusions. Say, from the front, he has the illusion of looking like a really tall humanoid, but he's still human-shaped, right? But from the side, he's a little uncanny, definitely not human. And those things actually get me the most, personally. I'm really desensitized to, like, horror and monsters, and I don't know. I was talking to my brother the other day, and we kind of figured out that on Netflix, I literally watch one show that's not horror or thriller themed. I don't know, it doesn't scare me. The whole time I was designing this, I just kept thinking, I need to make it scarier. It's not scaring me. I need to make it scarier. Having something that looks normal from far away, but is really off up close, that'll do it for me. It's a cool looking creature, but, you know, I wasn't really going for cool necessarily. There's so many designers out there that make really cool designs and make them way cooler than I ever could. So that's not really my goal. Like when I was talking about story earlier, story for me is paramount. That's what makes me care about other people's designs. You know, no matter how they look in the beginning, I will care about them if there's a cool story behind it. So, yeah, it's more about saying something with designs than just trying to make them look cool. And what was I trying to say with this? Boo? Honestly, yeah. You know, I was trying to make something scary, but not evil. A living, walking nightmare, quite literally. So like I mentioned earlier, like way earlier in the intro, I did a lot more work than I'm showing in this video. And the reason I'm not showing it is because I wanted it to be a decent sized video and to not bore you too much. So I think I'm going to be putting those other time lapses in a separate video as kind of a part 2 to this. I think I'll be able to fit everything within these 2 videos. So just in case I don't though, I will be posting everything on my Instagram for sure. If you like doggos, I post a lot of doggos on my stories, so rejoice. You're in luck. I'm starting to think I have a type for, quote, creepy but not necessarily evil guy who's not human but has some human features, unquote. So I think it might be time to branch out and experiment some more with shapes, body types, moral alignments. Oh, speaking of which, if you have any cool ideas for me to design, let me know in the comments. I would love to see what people think of. It'd be so cool. And if you're down, I would love to make more of these videos too. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun, and I'm sure it'll get easier in the future. So who knows? Maybe next time I'll design your idea. I don't know. All I know is this is really fun to make. I'd love to do it again. I'd also like to know if you liked today's character, or maybe even had some ideas for a different direction I should have taken it in. Remember earlier when I said I was pretending it would be a monster in a TV show? Well, to sell that idea, I threw together a really quick video that lasts less than 10 seconds. So I messed around with it, and the idea was that to someone just waking up, the first thing they would see might look something like this. But that's the last item on this video, so before that comes along, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching.